Howdy, folks, and welcome to another day in the Milky Way. Tonight we got part 2 of Buffalo Bill Wild Stories. You know, crazy wild stories from the Old West. And wouldn't you know, that's what we're going to read tonight. We're going to continue on with chapter 4 and Buffalo Bill's wild plot. Remember, last time he came riding into the fort, shooting his gun, chasing a herd of wild Indian ponies, and he captured the chief. Yes, he captured the chief Oakhart from the Sioux. So tonight we're going to find out what comes about that. He came in riding his horse, bringing a pack horse, carrying lots of ammunition for the fort as the red savages surrounded the fort. Well, what will happen tonight? Who knows? Stay tuned and find out. So we're going to catch up at chapter 4, Buffalo Bill's plot. So here we go. Screen. Here we go. And here we go. Well, continuing on. There was a look upon Buffalo Bill's face as he told Major Baldwin that the scout had formed a plan which he wished to make known to him. So he said, "Come to my quarters with me, Cody, and we will talk it over. Captain Keyes, kindly take charge of the regiment, and I'll see that he is well cared, or take care of his horse, and I'll see that he's well cared for." When they reached his quarters, the major said, "Are you in earnest in attempting to make this perilous run, Cody?" "Never more so in my life, Major Baldwin. No man knows the danger better than I do, or than you do. And no man knows and no man, I believe, sir, stands a better chance of getting through. I believe you, and yet there are many good men that might be spared to make the attempt. You are one who I can't replace. Thank you, sir, but my life is no more to many than another man is to him. Yet your place cannot be filled, and if I can get a volunteer, I wish to do so. Captain Keyes is anxious to go, sir, but, oh yes, Captain Keyes is a daredevil whom nothing will haunt or jaunt, but I refuse his request and others among my few officers. Then I go, sir. First tell me about your mission." "I delivered your dispatches, sir, and have here others for you. Then on my return, I feared there was trouble, and knowing that you had little ammunition, I remembered the supply we had to bury once when I was on the expedition with Captain Ames, as our horses were so worn out they couldn't carry but half a load. So I went by and found it in good shape. I had to kill an Indian chief just before I reached that spot, for he came for me roughshod, and his warriors war bonnet and dress made a good disguise for me, and his horse was very the one I wanted for a pack animal. I dressed up in the chief's outfit, loaded the pack horse, took my bearings as the best place to break through the lines, and I got along well until I reached the ridge. Then my troubles began, sir, and I skinned out of my deerskin disguise and made a run for it. So here I am, and a more gallant ride I never saw. And for fear that took me over may not know that you are the real king of the borderland," commented Keyes. "Think I shall have you baptized as such by the chaplain, but you have done nobly, Cody. And you know, now I appreciate your brave deed for the ammunition you brought, and it will save us for several days. Now you have a plan decided upon, I'm sure." "Yes, sir." "Well, I have ordered dinner for you, and while you eat, we talk." "Thank you, sir, for I am a little slim-waisted. I have not stopped to cook a meal since yesterday. Just like you, when others demand your services, it's live and live and let live with any true man. Major Baldwin, yes, You stick to your golden rule better than many. Better than many, and even our chaplains do. Now, sir, though we have old Chief Red or Oakhart as prisoner, I am sure we can make no terms with the Redskins. They love him, and yet they know he would not harm or they would not believe to buy off for fear of harm to him. I believe you right. Yes, sir. And so if you will have a talk with him, for you speak English, he speaks English well, and I happen to know, and from what does he does not understand, I can interpret into Sioux for you, can let him know that you set him free, having the desire to take his life or punish him as a brave uh, pony rider. But why set him free? Why set him free? To let me make sure of him, sir. How? I will mount his horse, the splendid white, which he captured for Colonel Miles, and no faster, long enduring, or better animal is on this frontier. I will let him mount my black, which is beginning to fail on me, and we will ride out side by side, for I am sure to return him to his people, you know, sir. I don't just see your plan, Cody. I'll make it plain, sir, by saying that I will paint up a rig up an oak heart, sir, mount his horse, and ride towards the lines. I shall wave his braves back as though I do not wish them to meet me. And when I get near the canyon, through the ridges, I shall make a dash for it. And you bet I'll go through all right. Nothing in that outfit can head me off or catch me. And the chief? Send him out of the stockade, sir, just as I make a break for the canyon, and that will confuse the Indians and be a stroke in my favor. A splendid plan. I believe it can be done. In fact, in no other way could a successful run be made through the death gauntlet. So I believe, sir, for strategy must aid luck. Yes, I see you are on our one to make the effort. Major, perhaps after all, it would be best for me to go out as my natural self, along with my scout pard, Texas Jack, and he to play the part of Chief Oakhart. We will thus confuse the Indians. Yes, we will thus confuse the Indians until we get well through their lines, for they will think some plan has been arranged by their chief and Jack, and I will both sail through it, for it is better not to have all your eggs in one basket, and one of us must get through. Jack has been on duty night and day. He had volunteered to run the gauntlet, but I refused, as I needed his advice. But he will go, and as you say, it is best to have two, though I am sorry you and your Texas partner are to be the two. I think we'll make it all right, sir. We can die but trying. So Texas Jack was sent for, and the plan was made known to him and readily agreed to. Then Oakhart was given a uniform and slouch hat in place of his war bonnet and buckskin suit. The scouts had their dinner. Buffalo Bill mounted the Indian chief's horse, and Texas Jack his own animal, and they were ready for the deadly ride. The chief, mounted upon Buffalo Bill's black, was held in readiness to be set free as the Border King and his scout comrade reached the danger line. Chapter 5. The Indians had retired subtly to the distance from their fort, their camping line, and the belt of red humanity still encircled the fort in a grip that plainly showed determination to bide their time for revenge. The wounded redskins had dragged themselves, those who could not do so, back towards their companions, while a few who were too far gone to move were brought in by the soldiers and cared for. This Oakhart saw, and yet his face betrayed no indication of his thoughts. The dead were left where they had been fallen to be buried. Later, after the scene that must follow the flight of Buffalo Bill and Texas Jack for aid. What would follow the departure of the two scouts, no one in the fort could tell. The defenders of the fort advance had not escaped in the fight without harm, for several soldiers had been killed and a half a dozen more or less seriously wounded. Some time came from the start to be made. Several officers urged that the Border King should wait for darkness, but he said it would be utterly impossible for a horse to go through the Indian lines then. Chief Oakhart had been mounted upon one of the captured ponies for Texas Jack, disguised as a Sioux king, was the ride and to ride his white horse. When Buffalo Bill and Texas Jack appeared ready for the bold dash, many not in secret of the ruse to be played mistook the Texan for the Sioux chief. So good was his disguise. Pardon me, Major Baldwin, but I would keep a belt of sentinels outside of the fort, sir, when night comes, and the men on their post, for the Redskins may crawl up for the dash at daybreak, said Buffalo Bill, as he prepared to mount. I will do so, Bill. Goodbye, and may your good luck not desert you now. You and Jack carry the hopes of the garrison. The ladies in the fort had come forward and said goodbye with earnest prayers for the success of the Border King and his companions. Then the word was given to start by Buffalo Bill, and they rode silently out of the fort. We will bear toward the left, Jack, for our best plan is to strike for the canyon, said Cody. Yes, we will make the dash only when we have to, as we will gain by getting as near as possible before being discovered. Right you are, Jack. The moment the Reds begin to move towards us, you must sign for them. Go back that we are coming at them. I will. But what do they think now? For they see us and wonder what you're bringing their supposed chief back to them. I'd give much to know what they do think, said Texas Jack. I guess before long we'll find out. Texas Jack laughed, and Buffalo Bill added, it is useless to ask you, Jack. If you've got your revolvers ready for an instant use, you betcha I have. How ready some of those Reds right soon. The two men were as watchful as antelopes and cautious, but they were perfectly cool and ready to escape death without the quiver of a nerve. They rode slowly, and the eyes of the Indians were upon them. It was very plain that the Redskins did not understand just what was the matter when they saw their chief. They supposed coming back to them in the company of their dreaded foe, the great Pahaska. They began to move forward in a body to meet the chief when Buffalo Bill said, now give them the sign language, Jack. This the Texan did by raising his first one hand, then the other, the palms towards the Indians and waving them back. They hesitated, then obeyed. The game goes our way so far, Jack. Yes, we've got a full hand of trumps to throw at them when they call upon us. But I'll get big money. The people back yonder are at the fort are watching us close. Yes, with beating hearts, Jack, for our safety, well as their own. And if the Oakhart isn't on our bluff and not secretly cussing in Indian swear words, I'll eat my war bonnet, which, by the way, is about as comfortable as a wreath of prickly pears. Buffalo Bill laughed and replied, I confess your sombrero is more becoming to my style of beauty, Jack. But you've got it along, and with soap and water, soon be yourself once more. If I don't get scalped, which is much more like this is no picnic for us, parted Bill. No, but we are doing our duty if we do go, and that this some satisfaction let us bear more for the canyon. They did so, and every eye at the fort was upon them. Every lip was murmuring a prayer for the two scouts. Their desperate venture. Closer and closer they drew to the Indian line, grouping towards a given point. That's the move I like to see. Make Jack so sign to them, get another. Texas Jack playing well his part of Chief Oakhart, signed as told, and the Indians moved more rapidly toward the point where it was supposed that the two horsemen would meet them. We are doing great, Jack. You bet we are. When we reach that tree ahead, we must make a dash. I'm with you, Bill. The tree was reached, and the Border King said sharply, "Now, for it." One more chapter. The hearts of the watching people of the garrison were in their throats, and the cry of the dread came when they saw the Border King and Texas Jack start their horses from a walk to a run. The Indians saw the act and did not comprehend it. They still believed that their chief was the one with the great Border King of the Pale Faces. The sign language used by Texas Jack had drawn many Indians away from the canyon. Those who did not leave were very few, yet had to be dealt with. The mouth of the canyon was really deserted, and Buffalo Bill had chosen wisely in making that point his place to break through the lines. The great scout had eagerly counted the ponies that were in view and saw that they were not over 24 in number. The stampede of the ponies had been an almost complete dismounting of the braves. The ponies that might follow, should they get through, neither Buffalo Bill or Texas Jack feared, mounted upon the splendid animals they were. Now, well, let's let 'em out, Jack, suddenly cried Buffalo Bill, when he saw that the turn had to be made direct for the canyon, for the two hold on that were bringing them roar them soon upon gathering crowd of redskins. Texas Jack smiled, reckless, settled upon him well in his saddle, and the two were off like a frightened deer. For an instant, only the Indians stood in dumb amazement. Then it dawned upon him that the dreaded king of the border had outmaneuvered them. The wild war cries that broke from their lips were terrible for those in the fort to hear. Then one man, the Indians rushed towards the canyon, firing as they did so. The scouts did not return their fire. They were kept their bullets for the marks nearest at their barrier. They must face at the mouth of the canyon. Suddenly, Buffalo Bill raised his rifle, and shot after shot rang out. He fired directly in front of him at the Indians gathering to bar their way. There were perhaps a score of them near enough to be dangerous. The repeating rifle of the Border King sang deadly music, for several braves fell. With the last shot, Texas Jack's repeating rifle took up upon the tune and rattled forth fatal notes. There were now close upon the red group, and the hot laden hail that forced them into a scatter. Then the reins let fall, and the revolver in each hand the scouts rode upon. It was a desperate charge, and through the hidden front, the great rush of Indians, by nature of the ground, was in plain view. All at the fort. Drop behind me, Jack, for one of us must get through. You know, cried the Border King. Texas Jack obeyed, and on the mad rush continued. A chorus of wild yells, the rattle of the revolvers, and the ringing of the war cries of the two scouts heard at the fort, and the Border King and the Texans were fighting and flying for their life. Every eye was upon them from the fort. They saw Buffalo Bill's horse stagger and fall, and Texas Jack pass on. A cry of horror came from 200 pallid lips back at the fort. A chorus of triumph yells broke from hundreds of savage throats on either side of the canyon. But the Border King arose and stood at bay, and the red men went down before his deadly aim, and mounted upon the Sioux chief's splendid white horse. Texas Jack was seen to turn back, dash to Cody's side, and with a leap, the Border King sprang up upon behind him, with his back to his partner's back and a pair of fresh drawn revolvers at hand to fire to the rear upon his foes. Just at that moment, Oakhart, the Sioux chief, dashed from the fort, believed to be, at first by the braves to be a soldier. The cheer that greeted the act of Texas Jack in returning for his chief and latter escape and novel retreat on the back of his white horse turned the eyes of the Redskins towards the fort, and thus saw their chief, recognized him through his call, and believing that he was escaping, pressed to his rescue. And meanwhile, Buffalo Bill and Texas Jack, mounted upon the white horse, passed out of sight into the canyon. And there we go. Next chapter will be chapter 7. Wow, we're up to chapter 7 already. Okay, well, thank you for joining me on that. That was part 2 as Buffalo Bill and Texas Jack made it through the line of the Indians, escaping on one big white horse as they dressed up as the chief. Wow, how adventurous. Shooting from the front and the back to escape death, to save the fort. Well, anyway, thank you for coming, and wait till next adventure as they maneuver through the canyon and go for help for the fort. It'll be an adventurous one. Don't miss it. Part 3 coming up. Hope to see you then. And remember, go out, be the frequency you want to receive, everyone. I love y'all. Peace, everybody.